Blood.
Like, you do not need to go out every day.
College is really hard.
Just to get involved in class.
Welcome back to another episode of Let's College It. I'm Lilia, a junior in high school and the co-founder of Let's College It, where we visit over 2,000 colleges and bring you the best advice and the best perspectives so you can form your own vision of the world. And today we have Charles joining us here. He is actually a long way from home. I mean, a little bit. We're from Miami, so he's Gainesville. I don't know how you do it up there in Gainesville, but it's so amazing to reach out to you and really see what, how your college experience has been shaped so far. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And, it's funny that you mentioned spending time in Gainesville. I think during my college career, I spent a lot of time not being in Gainesville. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who is listening. My name is Charles Horowitz. I am a rising senior at the University of Florida, double majoring in political science and classical studies. And I've tried to make the most out of my college career in a variety of ways, through extracurriculars, as we'll discuss, through academics, really trying to become that person that college is supposed to lead you to be. College is where people grow, where people mature, and where people are able to meet other people who they will maintain lifelong friendships with, professionally, personally, all of that.
Yeah, and I wanted to take you back a little bit to that start of the process of getting into UF and getting accepted. So can you walk us, as best as you can through what that was like for you?
Sure. So for me, getting into UF was relatively straightforward. I knew that they could occasionally be a bit heterodox in their approach to admissions. And I did know some qualified individuals who had been rejected, but I was also filled with that double-edged false aura of invincibility that a lot of young people have. And I was sure that I would get in, especially after they read my essay and reviewed my transcripts. Now, when I view those essays, which I still have saved on some file somewhere, I can see that there is a fundamental lack of core writing development, just seeping through the page at every twist and turn of the pen. I applied in the fall of 2019. So I was that class getting into college during the pandemic, which proved to be one of the most competitive cycles up to that point, in college admissions and at the University of Florida as well. And for the most part, it's turned out to be a good decision to go to the University of Florida, I would say.
That's amazing. And so you decided to stay like a little bit closer to home, right? In Florida. How did that feel for you?
That's correct. You know, by now, the University of Florida is the #1 public school in the country, and we have been named a new Ivy. So we are definitely up there. We rank higher than many Ivies, especially shout out to Columbia Ivies who like changing their results on US News and World Report. But for me, it was always pretty clear that I would be going to UF. Being in Florida, we do have Bright Futures, which pays for your tuition. And between that and other scholarships, it financially made the best sense. And then also there was just the fact that academically, it also made the most sense. 5 hours traveling between South Florida and Gainesville is a little bit of a hike, but it's nothing compared to a cross-country flight or anything like that. And just the fact that it does have very rigorous academics, and even then, I mean, it was clearly on the up and up, made it a relatively straightforward choice.
Right. And speaking a little bit, of the academic side and what you had to do previously to getting to UF, although it was kind of a straightforward path for you, how do you think that your high school activities and rigor really applied itself to prepare you for college?
That's a good question. And I'm going to give you an answer that I don't know if very many people would give it, because I don't think they did. And that's not a failure of my high school, but I want to acknowledge the reality that high school is not necessarily a place that prepares you for college. High school is a place that helps you develop as a person, like college does. And like college, you get out of it what you put into it. Now, to be sure, I had the privilege of having some excellent teachers at my high school, and I enjoyed many of the extracurriculars that I did participate in. But I believe that college is simply at a different wavelength from high school. And to change into that wavelength, you need to take what you learned in one place and adapt it to a new environment. High school isn't going to do the adapting for you. It's just going to bring you to a slightly closer wavelength. And ultimately, only you can do that adaptation.
Wow, that is a very, straightforward answer that I think, as you said, I've never received before about, high school not preparing you, but now seeing it from a different perspective, I do see that, as you said, it could look that way because it's totally different. I'm sure, as somebody who, as you have went through both college and high school, almost finishing college now, which is a big, big achievement. I'm sure that you were able to really tell the drastic difference between the two. And I also wanted to touch on your double majors. How were you even able to really manage the two of them being like, some of the toughest majors out there?
Sure. I'll be pretty short on that very easily. The time commitment for each major is relatively minimal, and the coursework is enjoyable. And double majors, I think, are much more approachable than they may seem to a wide-eyed freshman. I was not anticipating double majoring, but I said, you know what? Why not? If I have the space to do it, and I find the subject matter interesting, you might as well.
Wow, 100%. And I also wanted to touch on, your career goals. I'm sure you have a lot of aspirations. So I wanted to really ask you, what extracurricular activities do you think that really influence the career goals that you now have?
That's a great question, because the extracurriculars at university are really, I believe, significantly more important than the academics. Anyone can get through the academics if they study and that they work hard, and then they graduate and they enter the real world. The extracurriculars are where you meet new people, where you hone your interests, where you really engage in professional development if you do it right and if you do it well. At the University of Florida, we've been immensely privileged by the presence of a true statesman who is the late Senator and Governor Bob Graham. He's credited with rescuing the state from a rather short-sighted educational policy decision made by Jeb Bush. But his efforts didn't stop there. After he left the Senate, he founded the Bob Graham Center for Public Service at the University of Florida to establish a highly successful incubator for the future leaders, not just of Florida, but of the nation as a whole. And their funding of critical opportunities has been behind my professional growth, especially with the mentors that they have in their staff. I also want to circle back to the people factor. I can't emphasize enough how important the people that one meets are in these extracurriculars. It's because of one person that I knew and told me to apply for something that I was able to fly across the country earlier this year for an event on entitlements. I myself paved the way for someone now working on the Hill in DC to get a great job there. And the two most talented, skilled people that I know are people that I met through immersive internship experiences that were only possible for me because of the Graham Center's funding of that first immersive internship, which really paved the way. One of those people is the primary reason for another opportunity I have coming in the pipeline. And she's actually going to be representing the United States as a Fulbright scholar after having, in her own right, probably the most accomplished collegiate career of anyone that I know. And the other person I never would have met if not for another opportunity. And she's highly professionally developed and serves at the highest levels of her profession, which is, I mean, very high ranking. Um, Now, these all might seem like tangents or shout outs, but I use these organizations and friends as examples because these are the types of people you meet when you make the most of your extracurriculars. When I first entered university, I was under the impression that I was going to go to law school and embark on a career from there. Now, sorry to anyone who knows me and is listening and was still under that impression, but that's almost certainly not the case now. And I can see that my future lies elsewhere in a sector that I discovered that I think is more enjoyable and more rewarding and a bit more service oriented as well.
Wow, and it's really inspiring to see, as you said, how people can have an impact on your entire career and your entire, aspirations that you want to do and seeing it as somebody who, you've had multiple opportunities and you spoke about the opportunities, coming in for you and how the reason that you're able to get them was through people really makes it motivating to be authentic with others and to really share your true self, and it shows a little bit more about how extracurriculars is, I would say, a little more important than academics, especially in college, because as you said, you're finding out what you want to do and you're branching out. And while branching out, you have to make sure to really meet all different kinds of people in all different kinds of professions so you can really try all these out. And that really stuck out to me that what you said. So thank you for that because I think that multiple people are going to really need to hear that. And I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, your Florida political review and what insights did you really gain from that?
Definitely. So that was actually the first involvement that I had with the Graham Center. And that caused a whole nother line of professional development, which I found valuable. But probably the most interesting thing from FPR that I learned was the accessibility of experts. So for those who may not necessarily know, the Florida Political Review is a student political journal at the Graham Center. And you write articles and you interview people, and they're all about Florida. But I branched out beyond that, and eventually I departed from them and I founded my own blogs, journals, websites, whatever you want to call them. One called Policy Reform Now that focused on national, international level events, and another called the South Florida Ledger that focused on local and state events. But circling back, to FPR, and what I really learned from them is the accessibility of those experts. There are so many technocrats out there who can answer your questions and whom you can forge relationships with. And all you have to do is ask. Now, you might get some bizarre emails and many unanswered phone calls in the process of reaching out to people, but that opportunity to interact with people who have been at the top of their professions, quoted in other media around the world, well known, is simply unparalleled, especially for a college student who's hasn't even begun really their professional career. I mean, it's great to see that.
And I could definitely relate to that as somebody who, reaches out to a lot of people to interview and learn more about, their careers and so far what they have done in high school, college, and pursuing after college. It's very true what you said about people. You might not get the answers that you always want or you always expect, as in, you might get unanswered phone calls or weird emails or no emails at all. So it's really important to stay motivated and really all you have to do is ask because there are people out there that are willing to share with you and to help you and make you aware of the different, paths that you can go on. And I love that you mentioned that again. So that's beautiful. And my last and favorite question is what do you hope and what is your biggest dream after US?
Sure. Well, for this question, forgive me, but I can't resist the opportunity to get on a good soapbox. But this is a great question. And if I knew for certain, then I would currently be at the gas station buying a Powerball ticket. But since I am not there and I am on this interview, I can't predict the future necessarily, but where I want to go is a lot of it depends on the results of the election this year, whether we'll continue to have a democracy or we'll be an authoritarian state. But I do have two key dreams for the future, and both will be determined by the year's close. For myself, I want to see a successful conclusion of my academic career, to leave the University of Florida on good terms with the University of Florida and with the knowledge that I made the most of my time at university. But also, we're in a critical moment in history. And I have a dream, not just for myself, but for the American people as a whole. I have a dream that they will see the power that they hold this November and that they will choose the correct path. We must remain the leaders of the free world. We must remain a free nation, and we must remain a stable nation. Over the past 4 years, we've seen the resilience of the American people, and we've seen the most transformative policies, at least since FDR, possibly ever, led by a president presented with the greatest challenges since Lincoln, with a Washingtonian devotion to democracy and that broad-based institutional knowledge and coalition building powers that LBJ had. We're being led, quite frankly, by the greatest world leader in post-Enlightenment history. So I want to close out by saying this. A lot of the people listening don't know where they're going to be applying. They don't know where they're going to be going to school. They, like me, they don't know where they're going to be a year from now, and that's fine. But they can and they must, I think, determine a key aspects of their future if they are of voting age and they are an American citizen. Get out and vote. I don't care who you are. If you are an American citizen, you decide your future as a part of the greatest nation on the face of the earth in the history of the world. This is not a time to stay at home and complain. Even if you're under 18, you can do so much. You can make so many new connections. You can meet so many new people, and you can get really well versed. And you know what? If your resume is a little thin and you're applying to colleges and universities, I mean, this is a great time to get involved. This is such an engaging time for everyone. Even if you don't want to go into politics, you can say that you want to go into environmental science. Well, you know what? There's going to be some campaign out there that's looking for someone who can help with their climate policy. Say that you want to be an attorney. Well, you know what? This is going to be an amazing cycle for people who want to be attorneys because they will be able to see so many different facets of the legal process play out. So, that right to vote is a sacred responsibility. The right to participate in your democracy is a sacred responsibility, and it must be used. That might not be something that people are thinking about when they're thinking about applying to colleges, but you know what? Think about all those colleges that are publicly funded. And I'm not only talking about public universities and public institutions, but Harvard gets funding. Even though they're a private institution, they get funding from the federal government for research. I mean, everything is inherently political. And of course, I'm going to say that as a political science major. I'm a little biased in that regard. But either you participate in politics or politics comes to you. And I would much rather people be proactive and they help determine their own future.
I love that you said to really get engaged, especially, if you're looking at your resume, as you said, and it looks a little thin, there's always a time to be engaged and be involved in your community and just, reaching out to people. And I love that. So thank you so much for your time and your insight today. It has been amazing to really see what you've done and what has led you to this stage of your life and how you want to continue on. But thank you again. Thank you for your time and everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for reaching out. And I hope I help some people along on their journey.